There is no question that 2021 has been a big year for gravel. We've seen the launch of SRAM's XPLR component family, the UCI's announcement of an inaugural Gravel World Champs, and new bikes from the likes of Orbea, Canyon, Scott, Bianchi and BMC, besides many more. So we've certainly got a lot of data points to be working from in our tech trend predictions for 2022. Let's get stuck in. We've been seeing elements of what's known in the mountain biking world as progressive geometry trickling into gravel bikes for a little while now. Given just how transformative these geometry changes have been for flat bar bikes and how many iterative updates have been necessary to get them to the point they're at today, we can be pretty confident that this trend won't be going away from gravel bikes anytime soon. In a nutshell, progressive geometry involves lowering the bottom bracket, slackening the head angle, lengthening the top tube, and then compensating for the increase in reach by swapping in a shorter stem. These tweaks generally have the effect of making the bike feel more controlled and less twitchy, which is a great help for those more technical descents on steeper terrain. You can find pretty extreme examples of this in gravel bikes such as the Fossil Causeway and the Evil Chamois Hagger, but it's certainly coming ever more into the mainstream with BMC's URS range and the new Trek Checkpoint both adopting the cues. The changes do make a palpable difference. When executed well, it can make for a truly fabulous bike. We were particularly impressed by the BMC URS. The raked out fork, stubby stem and tight rear end made for a snappy, playful but easily controllable ride. What's particularly good about the URS is that the geometry tweaks didn't dampen its efficiency on long rides. Although so much fun for an evening or weekend blast, it still didn't feel sluggish when taken out on an all-day epic. Now, there is a limit, at least for us mere mortals, to just how much gnar a gravel bike can take. You might question the need for even slacker head angles and stubbier stems if your frame of reference is 40mm tyres on a rigid fork, which leads us neatly onto the next trend on our list. Does it count as a tech trend specifically for 2022 if gravel bikes have been swallowing wider rubber every year since their first inception? We'll hold on to an answer to that question, as the point still remains that new ground is going to be broken in 2022 and bigger brands will continue following where smaller ones have led. It wasn't long ago that 650B by 47mm was the gold standard for chunky rubber. Now, tyres much wider than that are being mounted to larger 700C rims to combine greater traction and cushion with better rollover too. The Canyon Grizzle is perhaps the highest profile bike to go up to 700C by 50mm. But there are plenty of gravel bikes from smaller outfits pushing things even further, such as the Salsa Cutthroat, the Open Wide and 3T's Exploro Max. For 2022, at the very least, we expect more brands to be releasing frames that match the Grizzle for clearance. And potentially, we might even see one or some of the more mainstream brands coming out with their very own drop bar 29er. Continuing on the vein of burly gravel bikes, don't worry, we'll come to gravel race bikes soon, we expect to see many more models coming spec'd with front suspension for 2022. With both RockShox and Fox offering gravel-specific forks, there is definitely the supply, and they believe the demand. It's a common refrain that gravel bikes are essentially morphing themselves into old-school mountain bikes, but that might not be such a bad thing at all. As cross-country World Cup courses are becoming rougher and more technical, the bikes are being made more capable too, but this does come somewhat at the expense of efficiency. Taking that all together, we expect that many more brands will be releasing gravel bikes equipped with front suspension and dropper seat posts in 2022. Now we come to the other side of the gravel genre. Yes, on the one hand you have bikes being made more burly and capable, but on the other you have those being refined for the UCI's gravel racing category, which is going to be underway in 2022. We've been seeing the Orbea Terra, Cervelo Aspero and Scott Addict Gravel all eschewing the widest rubber in favour of builds that are more lightweight and efficient. They're an answer to the reasonable complaints that going too burly can make gravel bikes a little too slow and sanitises the ride. These bikes are built for speed and to be more manoeuvrable, rather than just steamrollering over the terrain. Gravel race bike design makes for some pretty interesting specimens. The geometry still benefits from a slight progressive bend, making them more stable and confidence-inspiring than a traditional cyclocross bike. Although those machines are excellent for continuous 180-degree turns on flat muddy fields and hopping over arbitrary wooden boards, that reactive, slightly twitchy handling of a cyclocross bike isn't exactly ideal for longer distance endurance riding that's more typical of gravel. Paired with the right tyres, they're barely any slower on the road than a traditional endurance bike, but with the added bonus of being able to handle things off-road. You might think we're jumping the gun a little bit here, and to be honest, so do we, but not entirely. Let us explain. We're used to Shimano updating its group sets in 4 yearly cycles, so with GRX having only been released in 2019, by the books we shouldn't really be expecting anything for a whole other year. With that said, taking a look at Shimano's mountain biking group sets, the Japanese giant has shown it can churn out launches when it feels it's slipped too far behind. With SRAM having brought out 12 speed shifting to its 3rd tier while Shimano's range-topping XTR was still only on 11, the rapidity with which Shimano then introduced and trickled down the 12-speed tech was startling to see. We'd argue that Shimano is now in essentially the same place with SRAM when it comes to gravel group sets. Since the launch of SRAM's XPLR range of components, it can provide 1x gearing options with more range at both the top and low ends, while also smoothing out the cadence changes with the inclusion of one single tooth jump, of which 1x GRX has none. SRAM's 2x offering has long blown Shimano's out the water, again offering a broader range and more single tooth jumps. The only response Shimano has had has been that in offering mechanically actuated shifting, it can hit lower price points than SRAM can with its electronic 12-speed group sets. Although, that said, SRAM's 1x11 mechanical group sets can be cheaper and can provide more range than the Shimano equivalent. If Shimano could bring out a 12-speed electronic GRX group set at about the Ultegra level, it will have something to match SRAM's higher tier offerings. But since SRAM trickled down its 12-speed electronic tech down to its 3rd tier, really, a 12-speed electronic 105 level group set is necessary to keep pace. So far, that's completely without precedent, but even so, it could be something we see next year. It's a trend we first saw on aero road bikes, with the reason being to help lower the CDA for improved aero efficiency. For gravel bikes, full internal cable routing instead has the benefit of making it easy to attach handlebar bags and other bike packing bags. Cable management has always been a headache for gravel bikes, trying to thread the proverbial needle so that the cables aren't either damaging the paintwork or the bag, also ensuring the cables themselves aren't going to end up getting damaged, with the consequences being malfunctioning brakes and sloppy shifting. For both aero bikes and gravel, you can definitely see the reasoning behind using hidden cables, but at the same time, you can't help but feel that it's simply a clean aesthetic that's the real driving force behind this. Either way, it certainly stirs up emotions, some seeing hidden cables as yet another cynical way for bike brands to mark out the latest model in order to have something different to sell you, with increased maintenance faff only adding insult to injury. When it comes to cable routing, we feel the damage was done the moment they went inside the frame. At that point, aesthetics were put first and routine maintenance became no longer straightforward. With the prevalence of electronic and hydraulic group sets these days, we'd argue that a modern, fully internally routed bike is less of a pain than a partially internally routed bike with mechanical shifting and braking. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments. We've seen the option of integrated storage from brands such as Specialized and Trek for a little while now, but with Orbea having developed its own locker system for its completely refreshed Terra platform, the technology looks to be gathering some steam. Being able to store tools and spares inside the downtube of the frame retains the benefits that a tool keg on the underside of the downtube usually provides. Namely, it keeps these important items close at hand and quick to access. It also means the weight is kept low on the bike, making for a more stable feeling ride. With those tools and spares inside the frame, that frees up the downtube bosses again for storing an extra water bottle. Making use of what's essentially wasted space inside the frame has little downside, and so we expect more bike brands to be incorporating this technology into their gravel and adventure bikes next year. As with so many things in cycling, this is another piece of tech that has long been present for mountain bikes and is being ported over to gravel. Running low tyre pressures brings the benefit of much improved comfort, as the tyre is able to deform much more readily to the inconsistencies of the terrain. This has the knock-on effect of improving rolling resistance too, as less energy is lost when the tyre deforms than when the whole bike is pinged about. The downside of running such low pressures is that a square-edged hit on larger rocks can blast through the tyre cushioning and knock a dent in your rims. Tyre inserts take the form of essentially a foam tube that sit between the tyre and the rim in much the same way as an inner tube would. Large impacts can be absorbed by the insert without damage to the tyre or rim, and as the insert doesn't contact the underside of the tread, the impact on rolling resistance is much less in comparison with an inner tube. We've been seeing more brands come on board offering the technology. Vittoria is perhaps the most notable, but Crushcore, Rimpact and Tubolite each have their own version. As more people look to increase the comfort and performance of their gravel bikes, we expect the number of brands offering these inserts to only grow. Bikepacking bags are great for all-day epics and minimalistic trips. Being slightly lighter and much less bulky, you can travel further and faster than with a traditional set of panniers, which have the tendency to catch the wind and exaggerate the climbs. But the user experience of bikepacking bags can be quite different on a more relaxed gravel bikepacking tour, at least compared with ultra-distance racing that serves as an almost equal test of your ability to function under sleep deprivation as it is of your legs. For those more meandering rides, it'd be nice to be able to pack in a little more and to be able to access your things a little more quickly. Tailfin is one brand that has been developing a steady range to suit this growing portion of the market. Their Aero Pack, which is essentially a cross between a giant saddlebag and essentially mounted pannier, has been around for a while now. But more recent additions such as their 10-litre mini panniers serve to further increase carrying capacity while remaining shy of a full-on set of panniers. As more people turn to two wheels for their holidays, we expect more brands to meet the needs of increased carrying capacity. This brings our Gravel Tech predictions for 2022 to a close. Do you have any tech you're anticipating the release of? Please let us know down in the comments. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please like and subscribe for more.